Om Shanti. The name of today's chapter is The Opposition Strikes Again. Meanwhile, the woman who had been unable to follow Brahma Baba to Karachi languished in their homes. They found it difficult to remain separated from the satsang, but their relatives forbade them to leave Hyderabad for even a short visit to Om Mandali. These gopis, lovers of God, began to meet together, to meditate, and to discuss points of knowledge. Letters often came from Brahma Baba and they read them aloud to one another, taking courage from this gentle wisdom. But their feelings ran deep. To wait 5,000 years to meet God, only to be separated from Him by ignorant relatives, was to them a tragedy. One day they could take it no longer. 15 women got together and decided to break their bonds. They hurriedly packed a few clothes and left for Karachi. The women wrote to their relatives when they got there. We have all reached here safely. Do not worry about us. But for the anti-party, it was the last straw. They were determined to put an end to this situation. The families of those daughters and wives who had gone to Brahma Baba met with the heads of the anti-party and decided to strike immediately. First, they raised a large fund with which to pay off various officials and thus created a favorable climate for their attack. In their hearts, these families probably knew that their daughters had been justified in leaving, but they couldn't admit it to themselves. The girls had suffered abuse for months on end without giving in to anger. Yet they never stopped wanting to learn more of the knowledge and seeking a pure environment to live in. They never lessened their devotion to God, and now they were liberated. But they had left without permission, and it was a bitter blow to the family heads. They sought revenge upon the only target they could think of. The anti-party began by applying pressure on the Ministry of Sindh, made up of both Hindu and Muslim officials. The Hindu ministers were instructed to pressure the Prime Minister. They met with him and said they would resign immediately if he did not order a prohibition of Om Mandali. If these Hindu ministers resigned, everyone knew the ministry itself would be broken. The Prime Minister could not issue such a prohibition, though, for he knew it would not hold up and could backfire on him. But he could look the other way while the anti-party used its own means of prohibiting the spiritual group. The anti-party next approached the editors of the Karachi newspapers. They seduced them with offers of money while subtly threatening to undermine their advertising revenues if the paper refused to side with them. False and malicious articles began appearing about Om Mandali. Editorials suggested it be boycotted and investigated by the authorities concerning various fabricated accusations. Baba's children were also harassed by hired thugs. On several occasions, they were physically beaten by such people. But the sisters and brothers remained undaunted. Finally, a major lawsuit came to trial. An irate husband took legal action demanding his conjugal rights. The entire community had taken sides over this case. The anti-party hired a well-known lawyer to prosecute the case. They focused their efforts on ridiculing Om Mandali in court. Their prime target was Om Radhe, the young administrative head of the institution. If she could be made to look foolish or worse on the witness stand, a great deal would have been accomplished. Om Radhe was a young woman, inexperienced and unused to speaking in public. Yet she was made of steel, was virtuous, and of course, she was completely loyal to God and his medium. She represented the practical demonstration of the power of the knowledge. Would she falter under cross examination? Could they make her say things she didn't mean? Could they put the institution in a bad light? Many were eager to find out. It was a curious scene that took place in that courtroom in Hyderabad. No one among the onlookers or officials were prepared for what happened. Five sisters, including Om Radhe, received passes to the court. When their car arrived in front of the judicial building, police protection was required to keep the crowds of people under control. It seemed as if everyone in the district had shown up for the event. Even the police inspector and most of the local government heads were present. The sisters were escorted into the main courtroom, a large hall that was completely filled with people. Not even standing room was left in the gallery. Most of those outside would never even get a glimpse of the trial itself. The court had not yet come into session, and the noise of the crowds was deafening. However, as soon as Om Radhe and the other sisters entered the hall, silence fell over the gathering. All eyes focused on the young women in their white saris as they walked calmly down the aisle. Their every movement was watched and weighed. How would these people, who claimed to be studying under God Himself, hold up under scrutiny and pressure? How powerful was their magic? The onlookers were in awe of the calmness on their faces, and they wondered, is it possible that what they say is true? Has God Shiva incarnated in the body of Brahma Baba? If so, will God protect them in their hour of need? The sisters were serene as they waited for the scene to be played out. They understood this world to be simply a drama, a vast cinematic epic of defeat and victory, and they knew the beginning, the middle, and the end of this world drama, a 5,000-year play which would continue to repeat eternally. With God's knowledge as their shield, they remained detached from the events before them, theater goers having come to see the show. Why would we have been afraid of anything? Dadi Prakashmani, D.K. Prakashmani, one of the sisters present, recounted later. We bore no ill will toward anyone. We had received from God the greatest gift anyone could imagine, and we were only on His service. We spread complete peace and tranquility throughout that courtroom. The judge gave them special chairs to sit on. He seemed entranced by Om Radhe's appearance, and indeed her demeanor was absolutely royal. In her white sari, she looked so innocent and noble, so completely out of place in a modern courtroom. The proceedings got underway. The lawyers acted out their parts, presenting their various motions and sundry formalities before the court, but it all seemed unreal, merely a prelude to something of real significance. The atmosphere in the court was tangible. Time became unreliable. It must have been a good deal later, but it only seemed a moment had passed when Om Radhe was called to the witness box. Then the following dialogue took place. Judge, first you must take the Gita in your hand and say under oath that you will tell the truth. Radhe, what is the oath and what is to be spoken? Judge, take the Gita in your hand and say, I believe God to be omnipresent and whatever I say will be the truth. Radhe, Judge Sahib, I see that you are present, but I do not know if God is present here. I am not able to see God with these physical eyes. So how can I take an oath that I see God in your presence? I only see your soul in the form of a judge. So, if you agree, I am prepared to take this oath that I see a soul in the form of you, judge, as present, and whatever I say will be the truth. Upon hearing this strange answer, the people in the court exclaimed in surprise. Many started laughing. Some approved of Omrade's remarks and showed their support by clapping. Some said aloud, "True, true," or "She is right." The judge had never encountered such a situation before. He became a little angry and pounded his gavel. "Order, order," he declared. The crowd quietened once more. Judge looking at Radhe. "I am not God, so you need not take my oath. To take this oath in the name of God is the rule of the court, and we cannot break it." Radhe, humbly and quietly, "Judge Sahib, you have said to tell the truth. In truth, I do not see that God is omnipresent. In fact, I see that in everyone's mind there is anger, greed, even lust. If I am not able to see God, how can I take a false oath?" Judge, this is a court, not a satsang. You need not give knowledge to me. Here, this is the rule of law, and if you break this law, you will be tried for insulting the court. Radhe, fearlessly. Just as you are not able to tolerate an insult to the court, I am not able to tolerate an insult to the Supreme Father of the world. Even in the Gita, God has said, "Whenever there is the darkness of irreligion, I descend." Then how is it possible that God could be omnipresent in this world? The Supreme One is knowledge, joy, and love personified. He is the ocean of peace and stability. In all others, there is today the domination of vices, anger, greed, lust. There are storms of passion and mental instability. There is peacelessness and ignorance. So, how can the Supreme Father be present in everyone? The judge did not know how to reply. Silence filled the courtroom. Om Radhe had spoken with such authority and such obvious love of God that no one could oppose her or even wish to. Even the anti party representatives who were present seemed touched by her words. But the judge was bound by the law, and so he had to act accordingly. At last he said, "Judge, regardless of what you believe, the rules of the court must be obeyed. There are no exceptions." Radhe, "Judge Sahib, I will not take a false oath under any circumstances." Judge, "Still, I am going to give you time to think it over. Then I will ask you once more." Radhe, "I have already thought over it." The judge was in a quandary. He sized up the young woman before him and decided that she could be frightened into taking the oath. So little did he understand. He ordered the bailiff to place handcuffs on her. The officer approached Radhe with his handcuffs. She stood fearlessly and faced him. The people in the hall held their breath. Could such a soul really be subdued? At the last moment, the judge ordered the officer to stop. He saw the threat was of no use. The officer retreated to the back of the hall as the audience applauded. The judge gave up on the idea of taking the oath from Om Radhe. God had kept the prestige of Draupadi in the council of the Kauravas. But now the examination began in earnest, and the judge himself led the questioning. Judge, why did you girls leave your homes and run away to Brahma Baba? Radhe, Judge Sahib, have you ever read the Srimad Bhagavad scripture? When the Lord played his flute, why did the gopis run to him intoxicated? Why were not cases filed against them in court? The flute referred to in the scripture is actually the same flute of wisdom that we are hearing through the mouth of Baba. It is the incomparable knowledge of God. Let me ask you, Judge Sahib, if a man leaves his family and takes sannyas, religious vows, why is no legal case ever filed against him? In the eyes of God, men and women are equal. Now God has put the urn of knowledge on the heads of women. So, when we mothers have the opportunity of attaining purity and wisdom, naturally we cannot refuse. Why does not everyone rejoice over such newfound purity and elevation? Why are these questions put to us? The answer is clear, Judge Sahib. Whatever difficulties had been put in our path, whatever hardships and abuses have been inflicted upon us by our own relatives and friends, all are a reaction to our purity. The judge continued to put the sharpest questions he could think of to Radhe, but she turned all the points back with forthright and knowledgeable replies. Judge, what kind of eye lotion does Baba apply to your eyes? Radhe, Judge Sahib, have you read the scriptures? Judge, yes, I have read some. Radhe, then you must know that Gyan or godly knowledge is indeed described in such a term. There is a song which begins Gyan Anjan Satguru Diya Agyan Andher Vinash. Translation: when the Satguru, the Supreme Soul, applied the lotion of knowledge, the ignorance and darkness of souls were destroyed. It is just that lotion of knowledge which God is now dispensing once more. Judge, how many children has Dadaji? Radhe, the Judge Sahib, we do not look at Dadaji. Our revelations come from the Supreme Soul, who happens to have descended into his body. So you tell me, how many children does God have? Can any human being count them? He is the Lord of the three worlds. All souls are his children. Not only am I, or those who attend this satsang, are his children, but you, sir, are also his child. The judge wrote down all these answers to his questions. At the end, he said nothing but simply excused the witness. But as Radha returned from the stand, the gallery began again to applaud her. Before leaving the courtroom, all the sisters took respectful leave of the judge, inviting him to meet Brahma Baba on some future occasion. As they exited from the hall, newspaper reporters who rushed up to ask more questions besieged them. The sisters replied to all of them with warmth and depth. Then they stepped into their waiting car, and that scene was brought to a close. Next morning, recalls Dadi Prakashmani, we returned to Karachi. There we reported everything to Brahma Baba. But before we had even reached him, he had learned of everything through the newspapers. Now he was in the silent witness state, the silent witness state, completely free of care. And he smiled sweetly at us. That smile told us more than any words could, how we had done and how we must continue. Om Shanti.